Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this is the Suzuki S-Cross full hybrid. Now, if you're a regular to the channel, you know that I really do like cars like the Nissan Qashqai and Kia Sportage. Now, especially the Qashqai, because that was the car that created the family SUV segment and decimated the large family hatchback segment. That's why we had to say RIP to the likes of the Insignia and the Ford Mondeo. But the thing is, Suzuki tried to come up with a car a couple of years earlier to fit in that segment with the SX4. Unfortunately, it was a little bit too small. Now, as the years have gone by, the SX4 has grown and turned into the S-Cross, and this is the latest generation I've got here. Now, you can get the S-Cross as either a mild or full hybrid. But here's the thing, in a massively competitive segment where we have got cars that are mild and full hybrid, even plug-in, come with 2- or 4-wheel drive, manual and automatic transmissions, what makes the S-Cross stand out? Now, I want to kind of keep it a bit of a secret. However, the fact that the price is right above the car now is its big giveaway. So I've had this S-Cross for a week and I'm going to let you know what it's all about. And also, at this price, is it really a huge amount of metal for your money? Stick with me to find out. Now, when it comes to the S-Cross's styling, I'm going to be honest, I actually think it's a bit of a handsome and distinctive car. Now, it does have a family-friendly look about it, especially when you compare it to its brother, the Vitara. That's a car that looks like it should be mud plugging across the countryside. But with this, you do get that family-friendly feel about it, but it still screams Suzuki. We got the big S badge on the front, but we got plenty of body cladding on the front and rear bumpers, the wheel arches and the side skirts. So it does give you a little hint that the S-Cross is not just for the road. But also we got these nice distinctive LED lights at the front and also the tail lights at the back that definitely give it a second glance look about it. I mean, yeah, you wouldn't expect to see that on a Suzuki. But let me know what you think of the S-Cross's styling in the comments section below. But yeah, I actually think it's a nice, handsome car, very distinctive and very family friendly. But on that note, I think it's time that we leave the outside of the S-Cross and see what it's like on the interior. Sat in the front of the S-Cross, you are greeted by a very comfortable, no-nonsense interior that does feel very old school as well. But this is something I like about Suzuki. It's kind of like Ronseal paint. It just does exactly what it says on the tin. Suzuki aren't one of those brands that's really trying to push the boundaries of innovation and comfort and that. They just want things to be simple, comfortable, reliable, and easy to use. Now, because this is a family SUV, when it comes to getting in and out of the S-Cross, it's really easy because the doors open nice and wide and I've got that raised seating position. So anyone with any kind of mobility issues will definitely find it easy to get in and out of the S-Cross. And then once you're sat in the driver's seat, you find that these seats themselves are very comfortable. I wouldn't say they hold me in place as well as other cars in this segment, but I have done a couple of long journeys in the S-Cross and I have been comfortable. The only thing is there's no lumbar adjustment and it is manual adjustment even on this top of the range Ultra. Also with the steering, where you have both, where's the handle? There it is. Both brake and reach adjustments, so getting the ideal driving position is easy. And when it comes to interior quality, I'm going to say it's not too bad. Again, it feels like a Suzuki, so there's a no-nonsense feel here. We have got some soft touch plastics here on the dash, but really we've got a little bit of leatherette on the door panel and on the armrest, and then harder plastics higher up. But it does feel well screwed together and should stand the test of time. So yeah, once you get into the S-Cross, you've got a nice old school feel about it, but it does feel very well screwed together and dependable. Cubby spaces in the S-Cross are actually not too bad. We got some decent sized door pockets where you can get a medium, possibly large sized bottle of drink in there, but they're not lined with any fabric, so loose items will rattle around a bit. Now there is a little space underneath the right collection of buttons, and you can perhaps put something like a small leather wallet in there, but again, it's not lined with any rubber or fabric, so if you put any keys or something, they will make some noise. Now on the center console in front of the gear lever, we have got a little space with a USB-A charging input, and it's perfect actually for resting your phone whilst you're driving. Only problem is it's not lined with any fabric or rubber, and I would like to see that rubberized so it keeps your phone in place. Otherwise you'll go around the corner and it might slide from side to side, so you don't really want to scratch your expensive iPhone or Android. Now behind the gear lever we have got a couple of cup holders. They are of a square size. They have got a textured hard plastic lining to them, and they are a little bit deep, but there's no plastic grippers, and I have found that as I've driven around a corner with a bottle of drink in there, it has started to move, but it hasn't fallen out, so that's just something to be aware of. Now we have got the center armrest, and if I lift it up, it does unveil a little bit of additional space. Unfortunately, again, it's hard scratchy plastic, but there is a 12-volt socket in there. However, one of its highlights is that it does slide forward, so I can rest my arm on a longer journey. And then we've got the glove box, which is actually of a very decent size. We've got this unique little Suzuki bag there with all your gubbins and book pack in there, but it is, yeah, very usable, but again, not lined with any fabric. And then finally, we've got a little spot for your sunglasses. So yeah, when it comes to cubby spaces in the S-Cross, it is pretty good. I would say probably with the underarm storage, there are rivals out there with a bit more space, and I would like to see some rubber lining for areas like, you know, where you want to store your phone, and also with the cup holders. But other than that, no, it's pretty good. Now, as I said earlier, there is a nice old school feel to the S-Cross's interior. So essentially, if there's something you want to operate, there's a button for it. Now on the infotainment screen, we've actually got touch sensitive buttons, but they're nice and easy to use, especially when on the move. Then lower down, we've got your 360 camera button. Your dual zone climate control has really nice, easy actions to it, and the buttons feel nicely damped. We've got your old school heated seats with the high-low setting. And then we've got a little rocker switch for your drive mode select, and we've even got a button to lock the diff, again showing its off-roading credentials. This is a Suzuki after all. Now on the steering wheel on the left hand side, we've got your media controls, and a little lower down we've got your communication and voice controls, and on the right hand side is basically your radar guided cruise controls. And then we've got a little button there as well for the lane departure warning. The only thing you don't get with the S-Cross is a heated steering wheel, and there is a blank button here, so I'm wondering if that could possibly be turned into a heated steering wheel button. Maybe for the facelifted version, we shall see. And then we've got a couple of flappy paddles because this is an automatic with a manual function. And then on the right hand side, we've got a few more buttons here. Again, these operate some of the safety features, but also we have an eco mode as well. So yeah, just like other cars from Japan and Korea, we've got a nice simple layout to the interior. And like I said, if you want to operate something, there is pretty much a button to do it. Now, when it comes to the infotainment system, I've got a 9-inch touchscreen display. I've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but here's the big surprise. I've got wireless CarPlay, and I wasn't expecting that, so that was a nice thing to come across. Now, regarding the infotainment system itself, it's really kind of like a no-nonsense system. There's no swiping through loads of menus to do stuff. Everything is on one screen with lots of little icons at the bottom, but the icons themselves are not too small, so it does mean you can operate it quite easily when on the move. And then you've got things like CarPlay, which is nice and easy to operate, and the sound system in the S-Cross is actually not too bad. I have been playing my tunes in here and have been pleasantly surprised. So yeah, there are more, I'd say, flattering systems out there in terms of their design and layout and everything. They're a bit more attractive to look at, but do you know what? Again, like the car and like Suzuki as a brand, there's a no-nonsense feel to it. I can just operate it whilst I'm driving, and it is, yeah, it's a nice system to use. I haven't really used the onboard sat-nav system. It seems quite responsive, and I do like the fact that you can just kind of find anywhere on the map, and it will just say to you, do you want to go there, and create a route for you. So I do like that feature. And then finally, we've got the dashboard, which has some traditional analog dials. Again, what's the point of doing a digital dash? This is a nice no-nonsense display with a little, what I think is a 4, possibly 5-inch digital cluster in the center, just to give you all your driver data information. Now, with a lot of cars out there, it actually comes down to buttons on the steering wheel if you want to go through your driver data display. But no, again, with that old school feel to the S-Cross, there is a little stalk coming out of the instrument binnacle, and it's really quite cool to use when you're driving. Well, I say cool to use, it's a bit awkward, but you know what? When you're stationary, it's nice and easy. But yeah, that's just a nice old school thing to see. Now, before we go sit in the back, I do want to mention one of the big highlights on the S-Cross, and it's something I would expect to find on a car that costs at least twice as much. Now, I've got a sunroof on this Ultra trim, and that's nothing new. Lots of cars have a sunroof, and it is separated into two sections. So I was a little bit worried that this one section here was going to kind of go up and move back and still not really kind of open up much space. But no. If I turn the car on and bring this back, we've got a double sliding roof, and that is a huge highlight on this car. That's definitely worth showing off for. So yeah, the front end of the S-Cross sat in the front. It's a nice, comfortable, old school place with a quirky feature to show off. And on that note, I think it's time we sit in the back. Sat in the back of the S-Cross, it's a little bit of a mixed bag in here. Now, firstly, that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide. And as you can see, I've got a good amount of knee room. I can get my feet underneath the driver's seat if I want to kind of stretch my legs out a bit. However, because of that sunroof, yeah, headroom is very tight, and I am rubbing my head against the roof lining, which means if you are over 6 foot tall, you're going to feel pretty cramped back here. So this is mainly ideal for two, well, short adults in the back or 3 kids. Now, speaking of kids, we have got ISOFIX supports on the outer seats, and they are nice and exposed with the bar to make it really easy to affix a child seat. Also, the doors do open pretty wide as well, so that does make it easier if you're installing it. Now, cubby spaces are a bit okay. Now, the door pockets are a highlight. They are huge, and you can easily get a large bottle of drink in there. I haven't got an aeroplane style pocket on the back of this seat, but I have on the front passenger seat, which is something you see a lot of manufacturers do if they want to save a little bit of money. And then we have got your armrest with a couple of extra cup holders here, which is nice and handy, but there's no through loading into the boot area. And then when it comes to features, that's pretty much it. I've got no USB-A charging inputs or any air vents back here, and I've got no heated seats. The windows are of a nice size. They are tinted, and they do pretty much open all the way down, so that is a highlight. And you've got a little extra window in the C-pillar to get a bit of extra light in here. But yeah, if you are going to have adults in the car, those sat in the back are going to feel quite cramped, but it is definitely ideal for kids. And on that note, I think it's time we leave the rear seats and see what it's like in the S-Cross's boot. Opening the boot on the S-Cross full hybrid presents you with 293 litres of space, which, to be honest, in this segment of car, unfortunately falls quite far behind its key rivals. Those numbers simply aren't good enough. But I am going to say this, if you go for the mild hybrid version of the S-Cross, that increases to 430 litres, which is a bit more respectable. Now, the reason being is on this full hybrid, the battery pack and everything is underneath the boot floor, but on the mild hybrid system, the battery is underneath the front passenger seat, so you get tons of extra underfloor storage. But with this full hybrid system, on the plus side, you are greeted with a nice square wide load area, so you could get a large suitcase in here or a few weekend bags. Also, there's no boot lip to navigate over, and the actual boot lip itself is quite low, so it should make it easy to load heavy, large items into the back of the S-Cross, or perhaps if you want to take your dog out for a walk. Now, it's not devoid of features either, which is actually a big plus. We've got some tethering hooks, we've got a 12-volt socket, we've also got a shopping hook on the left-hand side, and a couple of little pockets on each side of the boot, so you can put some items in there so they won't roll around the boot floor. Now, even on the full hybrid system, we can put a couple of very thin items underneath the boot floor, but it is, like I said, close to useless, unfortunately, because of that battery system. Also, you can't put the parcel shelf underneath the boot floor, so if you do want to put the seats down, you do need to leave the parcel shelf at home. Now with the seats down, it's not quite a flat load area, but it is very respectable, so it does turn the S-Cross into a bit of a minivan. But yeah, with the full hybrid version, 293 litres simply isn't good enough, but that's why I mentioned the mild hybrid, because if boot practicality is important to you, that'll be the one to go for. And on that note, I think it's time we close down the boot of the S-Cross and take it for a drive. But also, one of the features I do like is that there is a button underneath here where I can lock the car and go inside. So I do like that feature. And anyway, on with the drive. So once you get driving in the S-Cross, first impressions are pretty positive. It's a comfortable and easy car to drive and definitely has that old school feel. One thing I forgot to mention is that you do get a traditional handbrake in the S-Cross. Been a while since I've seen one of those. Also, as well, as I'm sat here, I do find myself sitting a little bit higher than I would do perhaps in other cars, and as a result I've got a great kind of all-round visibility in the S-Cross. I got a commanding view of the road ahead. The A-pillars are quite thick and chunky, but because of the way that they're steeply raked, I've not actually got any issues around junctions or roundabouts. They've got this kind of nice angle to them, so there's no issues there. The wing mirrors have been pushed back onto the doors and they are of a nice size and shape, and I have got blind spot monitoring integrated into them. I would possibly say I'd like them to be a little bit bigger, but it's only a minor criticism there. And then if I look over my shoulder, I actually find there's not the thickest of C-pillars there, and rear visibility is really good. Now with this ultra trim, I have got things like 360 cameras and all-round parking sensors, so parking the S-Cross is an absolute doddle. But yeah, once you get going in the S-Cross, first impressions, they are pretty good. There is an old school feel to the car. Like I said, Suzuki have got this kind of no-nonsense way about it driving, but it is comfortable and it is easy to drive. Now there are two trim levels to choose from in the S-Cross range. There is the entry-level Motion and the top of the range Ultra, which is what I've got here. Now it's a bit difficult to kind of give a recommendation for a spec level, because depending on which spec you go for also lets you know which type of drivetrain you go for. So if you go for the entry-level Motion, you will get a two-wheel drive S-Cross. If you go for the top of the range Ultra, which is what I've got here, you will get four-wheel drive. You'll get Suzuki's all-grip system. So they're both very keenly spec'd in terms of what you get as standard. If you go for the Ultra, that's where you get the luxuries and the extra creature comforts. So I'm going to kind of put my 2 cents down as to which one I'd go for. Now I would want to go for the Ultra trim. I love that sunroof, even though it does hinder rear passenger space. I do love the extra kind of little comfort features you get as standard, but I wouldn't go for the full hybrid. I'd go for the mild hybrid. Now with the mild hybrid, it does come with a 6-speed manual gearbox, but you also get more rear boot space, as I mentioned earlier. But that would be my kind of choosing if I was going to go for the S-Cross. I would go for the top of the range, but I wouldn't have the full hybrid. I'd go for the mild hybrid. However, I've not driven the mild hybrid, so I will need to have a chat with Suzuki to try and see if I could get that combination. So yeah, watch this space. But it does also depend what you want from the S-Cross. If you want an automatic, go for the 1.5 with that full auto and full hybrid setup. You can't get the automatic with the mild hybrid. And if you want all-wheel drive as well, yes, of course you can go for the Motion with the 1.5, and you can just save yourself a little bit of money there. So there's quite a few combinations. I think there's 4 combinations you can go for with the S-Cross, so you can actually get the best of both worlds. But my personal recommendation, as I've already mentioned, I would go for the Ultra, but I would have it as a mild hybrid. So when it comes to engines in the S-Cross range, as I just mentioned, there are two types of hybrid available. So that actually means there are two engines available. So the entry level engine, which is the mild hybrid version, is a 1.4 litre booster jet petrol engine. Now surprisingly, the mild hybrid does produce more power than the full hybrid. It actually produces around 126 brake horsepower and 235 Newton meters of torque. So that is pretty impressive. In fact, the quickest version of the S-Cross will get from 0 to 62 miles per hour in around 9.5 seconds. But if you want to go for the full hybrid version, which is carrying a bit of extra weight, well, that gets upgraded to a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine. Now here's the thing, we have less power and torque. In fact, it drops down to around 113 brake horsepower and 138 Newton meters of torque. And the 0 to 62 time also takes a hit as well. In this particular car, it is around 13.5 seconds to 62. So there is a 4-second difference between the range. In fact, every version of the S-Cross gets a different 0 to 62 time. But when you are driving the S-Cross full hybrid, like I've said before, it does feel a bit old-fashioned. It does feel like a good old ICE car and hybrid from a few years ago. Now, it's not to say it's old-fashioned in the technology that's here, it's just the way it's kind of presented and the way you drive the S-Cross. Now, this is the big thing. This is not a car to be rushed. Now, I've got the Ultra trim with the full hybrid system, so I've got the all-grip all-wheel drive system. I've got the 6-speed automatic gearbox. Now, it's not a CVT, it's actually, I think it's called an ASG system, where basically it's a manual gearbox that's been turned into an automatic. Now, this is my first time driving one of these as a hybrid. Other cars I've driven, not that I've done a review on them, have been things like the Skoda Citigo and the first generation smart car, but it does have a slight CVT feel about it. And as a result, this is a car that just can't be rushed. You can't go nuts and expect, you know, to set your hair on fire. I mean, granted, yes, I got nothing there, but this is a car that wants to be driven in a very sedate and comfortable fashion. To give you an idea, I am doing 50 miles an hour. I'm not quite actually at the national speed limit, even though I have got that here. And I'm in 6th gear. And if I put my foot down, okay, there's 60, but it revved to about 5,000 RPM. It has got that old-fashioned CVT feel. So yeah, that's the thing with the engine and the gearbox and that. It's fine in a sedate fashion, but don't rush it. Don't rush it at all. Now, you're probably thinking, I forgot about the economy, because of course this is a hybrid after all. But no, I just wanted to get the performance and everything out the way. Now, Suzuki do make some bold claims about the S-Cross and how it is one of the most economical cars in its class. So this car that I've got here, the Ultra 1.5 litre with the automatic gearbox and the all grip, I've got a claimed economy from Suzuki of around 48.7 mpg, or basically it's just rounded up to 49. Now here's the thing, I do believe them, even though, and I'll go on to this in a second, this drives almost like a mild hybrid, not a full hybrid. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to go through the trip computer, you've got to press the little stalk here on the dashboard. Now, as I kind of go through it, it does give you a little bar of your little time frame of driving and lets you know what your average economy was. And I am always getting over 40 mpg, always. Only time I've gotten underneath it is if I've done a really short trip, and I am talking half a mile, but then again the engine hasn't had a chance to warm up. And even now I'm getting around 45, even close, probably touching 50. And that is really impressive, because as I'm driving this, it doesn't feel like a full hybrid. You drive something like a Toyota, or perhaps even a new generation Honda with its kind of reverse hybrid system, I'd be driving down here now and it would be in full electric. I'd be quarter of a mile or so, wherever it would be, it'd be in full electric, and then I get to a certain point and it will just switch over and put it to the engine. But no, I'm driving the engine, I've got the regen going from the engine. It's very weird. There aren't many times I've driven the S-Cross where it's driven in full EV mode for a prolonged period of time. It just seems to be little snippets, yet I'm getting economy like this. This is very impressive from this hybrid system. Only thing I would like is that the automatic gearbox to just be a little bit more responsive. Now, yes, I can put it into manual mode. I can go through the gears, and it is surprisingly quick changing gear, and there's no one behind me. This is letting me have full control of every single gear. I'm doing 40 miles an hour, I'm in 6th. Down to 3rd, down to 2nd. Let's see. It won't let me go to 1st. But that is actually a really nice system. I like it as a manual, that works really well. However, with this being the auto, the question would be, how often would you drive it in manual mode? I mean, there's a manual version available, so you might as well just go for that if you want to drive it in manual. This is probably set up so that if you do wish to do any soft roading, then that way you can go through the gears and you can control what's doing. Because don't forget, this being a Suzuki, there is an element of soft roadishness about it. That's one of the great things about the car. So yeah. So what's the ride and refinement like in the S-Cross? Well, ride-wise, I am very impressed by it. It is a very comfortable car to drive, and if you do a long journey, you should come out the other end feeling nice and relaxed. I am really impressed by it. Now, when you're driving at low speed, usually with these type of cars, I kind of say that it's a little bit fidgety and it's a bit unsettled. But no, not in the S-Cross. It is actually very comfortable. I got 17-inch alloy wheels, which I do love that size. It's great to see that Suzuki aren't putting 18s or even 19s on the car. So there is a bit of priority towards driving comfort, and I do actually appreciate that. Now, where I live, there are a few manhole covers that are kind of a bit deep into the ground, and they are a perfect test. Ooh. A perfect test of suspension, and this thing passed with flying colours. I went through those little manhole covers and this thing was just didn't even flinch. Yes, I could feel them, but I wasn't jarred or anything. I didn't get any booms coming into the cockpit. It was just a really nice experience. It's kind of a unique thing to come across in this type of car. Now, when you get up to speed, say 60, 70 miles an hour, it does settle down. Again, it is very comfortable, and the suspension is set to that kind of softer side, so you can see where the priorities have been made with Suzuki and the ride comfort. So yeah, that is a real blessing here in the S-Cross. But there is a trade-off, and that comes down to refinement. So you do get a better tyre roll coming into the cabin, especially when you're driving at motorway speeds. There is a better wind noise as well that comes off the wing mirrors and the A-pillar. However, it's not too bad. But when you are driving along, particularly at motorway speeds, and you've got the radar guided cruise control working, the one thing that can happen is you get engine noise coming into the cabin. And the reason being is it's radar guided cruise control, so if you've got somebody in a distance in front of you and somebody cuts in between you, the car starts to slow down. That's absolutely fine, that's absolutely normal, wouldn't expect anything different. However, if say your speed drops to about, I don't know, 65, 60, and then that car moves out of your way and you've got a free road in front of you, all of a sudden you're driving along and then the engine just starts roaring into life to get you back up to speed. And because there isn't a huge amount of power under the bonnet, yeah, that CVT kind of feeling comes in, and it feels like just that the engine's revving but not too much is happening. Again, driving the S-Cross, you have to drive it in a sedate fashion. So that's kind of the one main kind of negative I've come across with the S-Cross when it's ride and refinement. It's just that kind of engine drone when driving on the motorway. But if you're driving around in town and in residential areas, you shouldn't have too many issues. It is nice and comfortable, and it is refined at those lower speeds, but just be aware of that if you are going, say, on the motorway. So what about the S-Cross's handling? Well, I'm going to put it into sport mode, and let's see what's what. In fact, let's actually put it into manual mode as well. So, the first thing I can tell you, the steering wheel, I do like the quality of the leather, and it actually is a nice thickness to it as well, and a good size, so it feels nice in my hand. But I can tell you now, this is not a sporty family SUV. This is one built for comfort rather than sportiness, but there's a nice easiness to the way, let's put that back into drive, the way the S-Cross handles. Like I said, it is just an easy car to get around and drive day to day. The steering has got a bit of assistance to it, so it is quite light, so it makes it an absolute doddle to park. Again, that's why it's not a sporty SUV, so you don't feel connected fully to the front wheels, but for everyday driving you'll have no issues whatsoever. It's just got a nice responsiveness to it as I turn. It's just, yeah, that kind of hydraulic connection you'd get from a sportier car you don't have, and I'm absolutely fine with that. It's not that type of vehicle. If you do push it in the corners, you do get a little bit of roll and a little bit of lean because of that soft suspension setup. Again, absolutely fine for daily driving, and it's not kind of wobbly around or anything, so you're going to get any kind of motion sickness. Everything feels nice and predictable, which is what you want in this kind of car. And this is actually, I would say, a perfect family SUV for driving around town, for doing short journeys, you know, because of the way that the gearbox and everything is set up. It just likes those little journeys and being as frugal as possible for you. So yeah, when you combine the ride, the refinement, and the handling, you've got a family SUV that's just, you know, great for driving day to day. Just don't expect the kind of frills you might get from, say, a Seat Ateca / Arona, or, you know, a Ford Puma. So that's just something to be aware of there. But driving the S-Cross this week, I've had no issues, no complaints whatsoever. It's just a nice family SUV to drive and does all the things you want it to. So what are my thoughts on the Suzuki S-Cross full hybrid? Well, as a car, I am very impressed by it. It is a lovely, comfortable place to be. I love the fact we've got this old school interior. Suzuki aren't trying to come up with any kind of new innovations or anything like that. They simply want a car that works and is comfortable. Now, when it comes to the full hybrid, yes, it is flawed. Because of that battery and hybrid system, you lose out in practicality, hence my recommendation for looking at the kind of mild hybrid version. But in a segment which is dominated by cars now which are doing the hybrids, they are doing the plug-ins and everything, have a bit of ground clearance and that, you know, you'd think the Suzuki would get lost, but it doesn't, because it's an awful lot of car for the money. And also everything in here works. That's why Suzuki do what they do. And yeah, in terms of cost, that is the key thing about the S-Cross. There is also one other thing about the S-Cross, especially when compared to its rivals, and that is where it can go and other cars cannot. So yeah, the S-Cross, it is flawed. It's not the most practical, but it is comfortable, very well equipped, and compared to a lot of its rivals, pretty much all of its rivals, can go places where others can't. And when that's the case, yeah, you got yourself a winner. So the S-Cross might not be to everyone's taste, but if you need a car, family SUV that can go anywhere, this could be the one for you. Of course, you can also look at the Vitara, but if you want it to be a little bit more family orientated, this is the one to go for. Yeah, there is something fun about just being able to go anywhere in a car. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Suzuki S-Cross full hybrid. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. If you've got any questions or comments about the S-Cross and my time with it, please put them down in the comments section below, and I will do my utmost to answer them. But in the meantime, everyone, I hope you have a great day and a wonderful weekend, and I'll catch you all in the next video. So take care, everybody, and bye-bye.